I
Oh, wow.
could just watch a highlight reel of that for the next hour. That's amazing.
I mean, that was something. It was really something.
Wow, 55 years later, Lulu's getting back into the hosting route. She's got a brand new podcast, and she's here to tell us all about it and come for lunch and just spread love and happiness.
Well, it's just great to see you guys.
So good to see you. How are you?
Yeah, it's great. It's funny, you know, when you watch someone on the television all the time and then you come and you see them, you think you can just continue the conversation, but you haven't seen them for years, sort of thing.
You were so funny because you didn't want to let go of your plate of jerk chicken. You're like, I want that chicken.
I knew to come in early because I thought it would go. I thought it would go.
She's going to bring it here.
No, that's quite a good shout.
OK, are we going to judge this thing? Let's get it out of the way.
God,
it's done,
no,
then it's done.
So I
know I've lost, but listen, we recorded the well.
We did our wells for you.
Have a look at Dermot first. Have a look at this.
Well, was that right? A bit barky.
You were on.
Really?
You were on.
So
and you have to give this up. I do not want any competition.
See, he was good. Do you think he's been practicing?
I think he's...
No, I remember I've just woken up at this point.
OK,
I've just woken up. It's early in the morning.
Oh, it's tough to do that.
Have a listen.
Yeah, 5 a.m. this morning.
I couldn't even look at the cat. Oh, it's awful.
But you didn't finish it. You were absolutely on point.
I said
and
to her.
higher than you and I.
lost
You sang it in my key.
I lost confidence. I didn't believe in myself.
Well,
it's a
you've got to do some work on that, darling.
Thank you, Lulu.
But I don't think much work.
I'm OK with you giving it as he won.
Well,
yes,
I don't know that I could just give it to you, really. Let's be fair. But you didn't finish it, so maybe.
Yeah,
yes.
sure.
Maybe.
I didn't
but no, sod off. It's International Women's Day.
That's it. And you just
She's getting it.
Now,
listen,
let's talk more Lulu.
Let's talk more Lulu. OK, first of all, podcast. How did it come about? What is it about?
Well, it's called Turning Points, and it's really... I have a new management, and they're amazing. So they said, you know, they've been asked, would I do a podcast? And they said, you can definitely talk. You can blether, Lou. But, in fact, it sort of has... It's like combined with the fact that I'm writing a memoir.
Yeah.
And this memoir is intense.
Is it in a lot?
It is a lot. It's still not finished. And I've actually gone into therapy because to support me, I'm being as honest and as vulnerable as I can be because I'm actually a private person.
Yeah.
So for instance, my childhood trauma is very private. I have never really talked about it. So I do talk about that. And I talk about some other things that I haven't talked about. No kiss and tell. No, you know, shaming or blaming. But this is, I mean, I'm 76. Yeah. So if I can't be more vulnerable and if I'm going to start a book, you've got to tell as much as possible. Yeah. So doing that has allowed me to do... It's sort of opened the door for me to do a podcast that's called Turning Points, so that I ask my guests to go deep. A lot of them, the ones I've chosen to speak to, famous, so we know a lot about them.
Mm-hmm. And they don't really go deep normally, though, do they? Back in the day, I can remember...
Well,
they never would go as deep as we go nowadays on podcasts. They get really under the skin, don't they?
Well, people, in some ways, it's really, really good to be vulnerable. And, I mean, I've learned that because my modus operandi, I sing and I do what I do to connect.
Yeah.
I want to connect to people. I don't want to feel different, odd. And I think as a child I felt different and separate and odd, and I had issues that I wouldn't talk about. So to be able to talk about your issues,
lovely.
You find that other people have similar issues. And I think that's so helpful. It makes you don't feel alone.
Sure. And I bet you're having conversations with people you've known for years, but you've never had these conversations with people you've known for years.
I actually have said that probably to most of them. I mean, I did with Boy George. Well, George is easy. George...
He's an open book.
Such a great open book, isn't he?
He never shuts up for a minute. I love him to death, and it's easy to work with him. But then, you know, I've had Brian Cox. I think we dropped the Brian Cox podcast this week. And, you know, went into things about his childhood that he hasn't talked about, because I really do feel that our childhood, anyway, forms us.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
You know, and if we have things that didn't work, you know, or anything we need to look at, you can get better, you can grow from your child. You don't have to stay there with some... And I have stayed stuck with certain things that I talk about in the book that I now can relate to with my guests on Turning Point, the podcast. And it's sort of like everything seems to be full. And then I now have a charity. I have a trust. called Lulu's Mental Health Trust. And that all comes about from actually getting older, getting,
Wiser.
Hopefully wiser.
But they say that, don't they? In your later life, you should give back, and that's a lovely way to do
There
it.
you are.
That's you're in that.
In Denzel Washington, it's
Learn,
earn, return.
Return.
That's
Yeah.
a really sweet. I
Yeah.
love Denzel.
Yeah.
I love Denzel. I've always loved Denzel.
You've always just
Get
been
him
return. You're so good. You're so
But yes, it's true. As we get older, hopefully get wiser, and then you realise, what it is. What is it I have to give? What do I have? I mean, I've talked my head off for 60-odd years, but there's a lot of things. I'm so private in certain areas. My mother used to say, never wash your dirty linen in public.
Yeah.
And that's how it was looked at then.
Back then.
But now, it can be helpful. I mean, some people overshare. I gotta watch that. But I think if it's constructive, where you
Helpful.
relatable, then we can all help each other. So it's actually, I mean, Brian Cox and I did nothing but laugh.
What a great guest, by the way. Here.
Well, yeah, I've got Brian Cox, Kristen Scott Thomas,
Right.
John Legend, and more.
But you're used to doing this. You had It's Lulu.
Yeah.
It was amazing time. You had the stars. I mean,
We just
you're a
say
big
before
star.
we finish up, if you wanted to start with it, that is one great black book you're looking at there, isn't it? She's like,
I've got a good book.
Yeah.
I've got, and I can call people, but people aren't always available. But most people I've called, they've said, maybe not now, maybe we'll do it for the second lot. And so it's great.
Lou, thank you. Lulu's podcast, Turning Point's available to stream now.
Thank you so much for visiting our This Morning YouTube channel. We upload new content every single day, so go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you in the morning.